And when I went to drama school, it was to Rose Bruford. And I didn't want to be an actor, I wanted to be a writer. But because at that time there was an education element to the course at Rose Bruford, we were training as actors, but we were also training as teachers. We were being sent into schools and sort of having contact with all kind of different age ranges. So the work seemed implicitly related, art and education, in my mind. They weren't two separate camps. So coming out of drama school, I didn't expect to kind of go and write for the Royal Court of the National Theatre. I was already in another kind of, on another route. And the only shame, I think, has been that, and I think it's different now, that you can hop from one, so we were put into a kind of box. If you worked in young people's theatre, a lot of people in so-called mainstream theatre put you in, said, oh, it's lesser art and it's art for young people, it's not theatre, darling. So, but I think that has changed, and now if you write for young people, you can easily go and write an adult play for the national, what matters is the quality of the work. The first job that I applied for was Leeds Theatre and Education as an actor. Right. And got it. Yeah. And then became a writer for Leeds Theatre and Education and was with them for over a year. And then I left, and a certain Michael Kenny took my job. So we both had a similar sort of training there for on the spot writing, and I started to write for Leeds Theatre and Education. Well, there wasn't any way you could be a writer, and I was interested in the theatre, and I enjoyed acting, but I didn't really want to be an actor. But you couldn't go to writing school, and it seemed to me to be a very practical way of learning the craft. I mean, I'm not sure how conscious this was. I mean, I was 18, I thought, great, I can leave the West Country and go to London and go to a drama school. The fact that there were so many companies being born, and there were some of them would die quite quickly, but there were small groups of actors, who then would need, writers working with them, and you fitted into that infrastructure. That the idea of why you were involved in the whole artistic process was the thing which really got, I think, put into myself and others at that time. If we'd gone to somewhere like RADA or Central, I think it was much more about you as an individual are going to be on a route where you will be the main attraction in this artistic endeavour. And you're going to on the Star, not necessarily on the Star, but a kind of different acting career arc. Whereas Rose Bruford, it was you were always doing something for a group or a school, or there was always another reason, another ethos behind it. It wasn't to do with creating 40 individuals, some of whom might go on and become stars. And I think it's interesting that a number of people who came through that have all had sort of long careers, but not too many stars, one or two. It wasn't the main thing. It's good if the writers are crossing. I mean, certainly you don't have, writing for young people's theatre now, doesn't stop you writing for children's television or radio or film. You can have I think it's good for writers to think they can actually work in multi formats.
Absolutely. On your website you talk about being a writer in residence at Theatre Centre. When did that come about, and what was it like, being a writer in residence at Theatre Centre?
It came about when I left Leeds, and I came back down to London for personal reasons, to continue a relationship and get married and all that sort of stuff. And I joined Theatre Royal at Stratford East for a short time under Claire Venables, and then Dave Johnson gave me a kind of trainee post, if you know it, as a writer, and there were 3 writers. There was Chris Hawes, I think, and Dave Holman, myself, and others. But there were 3 male writers and 3 male directors, and it was a pretty male-led operation. I'd written some stuff which I'd sent them, and it was very much a punt on their behalf. They'd seen something, and I wrote 2 or 3 plays for them, which were put on. It was a fantastic learning curve, and it was a shift from the devising, which we did at Leeds, into writing plays, workshopping them, putting them on, and touring them. 16 weeks, you have to write in 16-week blocks, and it was put into a weekly wage. So it was a way of sustaining a writer with artistic input and having a life. It wasn't like you were sent away into a garret to write, but actually it was, as a young writer, it was great to be involved in the whole theory about how does the company exist, what's its future going to be, and get involved in those discussions. And of course the big question, the relationship between art and the state as represented by schools. And this ongoing debate was very, very fascinating.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the role of art in education, which is still going on, it's going to go on forever. And having small groups of people going into schools to do plays seemed to us to be the most natural thing in the world, and a very strong good thing, which a tradition which goes right back to the Middle Ages, almost like people drawing up in a cart and getting out and doing a show. I think one of the problems for art in education then, in the 70s, we were very much involved with the whole political, which is natural, thing that was going on. There was a big National Front presence in London at the time, and Thatcher was just around the corner, as it were. And sometimes the work was about finding something which you wanted to say and tell the children or tell the young people. It wasn't quite characters weren't fully realised, perhaps because there was a kind of sense of message and issue. As sort of young writers who felt that we had something to say, I would say that looking back at some of the work, it was a little shallow. But at the same time, because it was, in a sense, it got very clear. It could be very powerful, and it wasn't all, it wasn't all bad. It was just rather singular. Myself individually, I try not to write in that way anymore. Probably because I'm very less confident about what I think about certain things. I'm more able to let the character have an opinion which is not my own. It is very healthy to develop, if you can, relationship with theatre company, because it makes you think and believe that you exist in a theatre context, a theatre world. You're not on your own. And I've had sort of long relationships with the Sherman Theatre Company. I've written a lot of plays for young people for them. Theatre Yolo, Hijinks, New Perspectives, different companies to whom I have gone back time and again. But the relationship with Gwent Theatre, the understanding of their project and how you would fit into it, that it wasn't just about I'm going to write a play which is going to change the world. And I've never really thought of writing in that context. I'm quite happy to write a play, and it goes on and it comes off. Write another one, it goes on, and to keep turning round. It seems very healthy, and that is the case. And occasionally something happens, like Spell of Cold Weather for Theatre Centre many years ago gets taken up, and it's all over the place for many, many years. And I think that if you're going to write for companies rather than just write on your own and send plays out to be hope, you've got to find a way of joining your own artistic ambition and drive to what the company want. And I've always enjoyed that practical sense of that theatre is not this great elusive idea that art is going to sort of come down to us from the heavens and appear on the stage. That it's a working, practical thing. You're making all the time. And if you're doing that with other people, then you have to be able to concede and to their ideas and be part of that collaborative process. And I think there was a band of writers like Mike Canny and Greg Cullen here, many of them, who have been made as writers through that process, through that collaborative process. And that doesn't mean to say that you're not an individual writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are certain projects, and now particularly, where I feel, yes, I will take on everything that the company wants, but I actually think it's really better that I now write this play myself, and I'm going to go away and write it. So there has been a shift, and I found that my best work has come when I've actually taken everything that the company is and wants, but then go away and do my thing, because I've discovered that what I can do is actually write a play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've really enjoyed that element, looking back over like 50 plays or something. There's about 15 of them which are like that. Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, the classic ones, Tinderbox, Sinbad, all these big stories. And I try to find in them what is their basic dramatic life, and what is it that makes them hold an audience, whether it's the story just being read to a child. What is it that makes you go, you want to know what happens next? So you've got to engage with that principally, and I think you've got to really enjoy the sense of mystery that fairy tales have, and that's what attracts me about them. That they're not message driven; they're much more psychologically driven. I mean, at certain stages in literary history, I think they've been made into sort of moral fables. Mm-hmm. So they're very rich ground for trying to look and find out what really is going on in there, where you relate to that, and bring that onto the stage within the framework of a story. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, Cinderella, which is done the most times by across the whole world. I have 3 versions of that about to happen. One in America, one in Germany, one in London. And there must be some reason why that play is being picked up, because there's thousands of versions. And perhaps it's because this particular version is great fun. It's all the elements are there, but underneath it is an exploration of the notion of grief and loss, and the fact that the idea of the notion that through the drama you can move to another place. So not in a preachy way, but that there is a positiveness about it. Mm-hmm. So it's using the darkness of the tale, but at the same time bring that it's an audience feels complete satisfaction at the end of a well-told tale, that they're not left still in the darkness of grief. And other people use fairy tales in different ways, in very disturbing ways, and I think I try to use the disturbance that they offer, because theatre should be disturbing, but at the end of them I like to have this kind of resolution, and I think that combination of trouble and solution is satisfying to the audience. But in the fairy tale, there is I think the implicit understanding that the child agrees to go with you on the journey because they know they will come to this light at the end of the tunnel. And you need, in a literal sense, you need to have a bit of scary stuff for it to make the dog trip worthwhile. But I find that, for me, this is just an individual thing. Art isn't life. Mm-hmm. We are reconstructing life into a shape. Mm-hmm. And as an artist, I like to create, as much as I can, a perfect shape. Some people are about deconstructing everything. I like to construct, and I like the audience, in a sense, almost with a theatrical poem, to get to the rhythm and the shape of the thing. And then I feel I'm making something that can, perhaps in 20 years' time, still be done, that it has a certain purity, a shape, a construct, and I'm adding something, and it's that I find that fulfilling for me.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't like the formless.
Mm-hmm.
If I use the formless within a narrative, it will eventually coalesce to become something. Know your audience, but don't write for them. Write
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. Would be one, I'm sure. Don't worry about critics and their stars. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. Don't write dialogue too quickly would be a tip. Although that's different as well. Some people actually start from nothing and start to invent and create a play from dialogue, and that's how they discover their ideas. But for me, I would say the dialogue is the last thing to happen, and that research. Know your subject inside out, so that you don't have to think about it while you're actually writing.